All right, what up, y'all? Today's going to be a little bit of a longer video, so I apologize for that if you are on a tight schedule, but there will be timestamps listed below. So if you need to jump around in certain parts of the video because you already know some of the information that I'm going to cover, please refer to the description box below. Before we get started, I want to thank every one of you for watching my videos and supporting me. It means a lot. I really do appreciate it. And if you have any kind of suggestions and ways that I can improve or videos that you want to see covered, please let me know. I would love to hear about it. So today's video is going to be about repotting. We're going to discuss why you need to repot your plants, when you need to repot your plants, and how you should repot your plants. So first and foremost, we are going to talk about why you need to repot. So repotting is essential to provide the plant with enough space to grow, to allow its root formation to expand throughout the soil and uptake more nutrients, and to have the proper amount of moisture. And if something is very root bound, meaning that it is totally root in the pot and there's hardly any soil left, it's going to stunt the growth of the plant and it is not going to grow nearly as well. So that is a clear indication that you need to repot your plant. So when should you repot your plant? You should absolutely do so during the growing season. The reason why you want to do this is because the roots are going to have a much easier time establishing whenever you are repotting through the growing season. Repotting is very stressful on the plant. We're taking out of its established environment and totally transferring it into a new fresh medium and a new home. So it is very stressful. So we want to make this process as smooth as possible as we can for the plant to minimize the amount of stress that we are putting on this plant. So now that we know we need to do this through the growing season, unless absolutely necessary to do so otherwise, we also want to look for signs of a plant needing to be repotted. So as we had discussed, being root bound is a sign of a plant needing to be repotted. As you can see in this photograph here, this is a very root-bound croton that I had last season that needed a repotting. Hardly any soil medium left at all. So if you actually pull the plant out of its pot, you'll be able to see the root formation. And if it is very bound like this, or even if it's a little bit less than the picture I showed, it will be a sign that you need to repot your plant. If you don't feel like up shoveling the soil and taking a look, you can look on the underside of the planter. I can actually see that there are some roots coming out of the bottom of this planter. You may be able to see that as well. You can see the roots kind of stretching out here and looking for some more space. So that is another sign that this plant has outgrown its pot. Furthermore, if you have a plant that you recently purchased and is new to your home, I would not recommend repotting it then either. You definitely want to make sure that your plant is as acclimated as possible. So if you just purchased a plant, give it a few months to even a year, unless it's absolutely necessary to repot the plant. That way it has some time to acclimate to the new humidity level, light level, heat, and things like that. But if you do have an established plant that has been in your home for a while, such as this Dieffenbachia, aka the dumb cane here, I know that I am ready to go and ready to repot this plant. So now that we've gotten the why and the when out of the way, let's move into the how. So I will demonstrate how to repot on this Dieffenbachia here. What you're going to need is a planter that is one size up from the current planter that the plant is in. So this is a 4-inch planter, and what I have here today is a 6-inch planter. So if you go from a 2 to a 4, or a 4 to a 6, 6 to an 8, so on and so forth. You don't want to upsize your pot too quickly, and the reason for that is that it will have much more soil space than it actually needs, so there's going to be much more moisture that needs to evaporate from the pot and be used up, which can very easily lead to root rot. And some plants actually prefer to be a little bit root bound. If you give the plant too much space, too much of a good thing sometimes isn't always good anymore. So definitely just go up in a 2-inch increment, and that is your best bet. And whenever you're repotting your plant, you definitely want to consider what type of pot you are putting your plant in and what type of plant you have. So terracotta is a pretty safe bet for most plants. because it does wick up the excess moisture left in the soil, which would prevent root rot because that excess moisture is getting wicked up. Things like plastic and ceramic planters are going to hold on to a little bit more moisture because they are not porous like terracotta. Therefore, they are going to be a little bit better for a plant that prefers a little bit more moisture around its roots. The dumb cane does prefer to stay a little bit moist but not wet, so it would definitely do okay in a plastic pot or even a ceramic pot, and that shouldn't be a problem. I'm just opting for terracotta because I prefer the way it looks. Okay, so let's go ahead, dive right into this, and I will go ahead and do this. So I have this Dieffenbachia top dressed with some river rock that I am just going to take out of here. All right, everyone, so I'm gonna get into this and I'll kind of talk throughout this process. So I'm gonna lift this plant up out of its pot. I'm going to kind of break up the roots here by squeezing the bottom of it if you can. Yep, and we can see there's some root growth around here. This probably could stay in this pot for a little bit longer. We are getting quite a bit of root formation there at the bottom. However, I am going to choose to repot today for the purpose of this video. This soil is a little bit on the moist side, which I found is best to use whenever you're repotting a plant. Water it a few days beforehand. Sometimes extremely dry soil can be a little bit difficult to work with. And the same goes for this soil that I'm actually going to be using in this pot here. It is on the damper side. So what I'm going to do next here, I'm going to get this placemat so dirty. But I'm just going to break up some of this root formation that is around the bottom of this plant. Ideally, I mean, you could really, if this is extremely root bound, I could sit here for like 30 minutes and really pull all of the roots apart and really kind of get all this old soil out of here. However, the reason why we do this is to allow the roots to kind of spread out in their new pot. So if you're going to put, if I were to not break up this root ball at all and just plant it into this pot, it is not going to really expand and occupy its space very well. I mean, if it's all entangled in itself in this kind of 4-inch circular pattern here, and I put it into a larger vessel, it's really not going to have anywhere to go because it's all bound at the bottom there. However, I think that this plant has quite a bit of loose roots at the bottom, and it's not really essential for me to really break up a lot of this plant. But I will definitely go through here and break up a decent amount of it. All right, everyone, it's also important to note that this is a clean pot. I cleaned it with soapy water. You can use peroxide, would work great as well to disinfect any pots. And I'm going to be using a clean soil to repot with as well. Before I put this in here, I'm going to mention that it's important to keep some of the old soil from the previous planter. This soil here actually has like its own little biome that this plant has grown accustomed to. So whenever I repot into this plant here, I'm actually going to take some of this old soil and disperse it throughout this new soil mixture. That way we have some, you know, kind of familiar bacteria and more of a familiar biome for this plant so it doesn't totally shock it. So depending on the size of your plant and things like that, I'm going to go ahead and just put a little bit of soil in the bottom of this pot, and it looks like that would be perfect. So now I'm going to mix in some of that old soil from the previous plant. If you had a pest problem or some kind of disease problem in your previous pot, I would definitely not mix any of the old soil in there. But if it's healthy and everything, it should not be a problem. So as I pour this soil into here, I'm going to be sure not to really pack this soil in there. I don't want to compact the soil. I want it to be fluffy and airy. That way, water absorbs better and more evenly through that porous kind of mixture. This will also, keeping the soil on the airy, fluffier side and not compacting it, will also allow the plant to get the oxygen to its roots that it needs. And that is part of the reason why your plants die whenever you overwater them. Besides the rot, you're actually depriving the plant from oxygen that it needs whenever you're keeping the roots too wet. So I'm just going to go ahead and finish up putting the soil in around the root ball. You want to fill your planter up pretty much to the top. You want to leave a little bit of space if you are going to water directly into the soil for some water to collect there as you water the plant. However, the soil will settle over a period of time, so don't be alarmed if you're really packing this planter full. It is normal for that soil to compact and settle after it is watered and after it settles into this pot. All right, so I have this plant repotted here. I'm just going to press lightly on the top of the soil to make sure everything is nice and tight in there. Nothing is going to really fly around, but I'm of course not compacting this soil. I'm not pressing down as hard as I can because that is going to really compact the soil. So now that I have this repotted, I'm actually going to top dress this plant with some worm castings. Worm castings are a really great natural fertilizer. It's just worm poop. But they are packed with macronutrients that the plant needs, like nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. And worm castings make a great top dressing for the reason that every single time I water this plant from above now, all of those nutrients are going to seep down into the soil as that water collects and goes down into that pot. So if you ever need a plant that kind of needs topped off, I would definitely recommend using some worm castings. All right, everyone, so now that I have repotted everything, I am going to go ahead and top dress this now with some rocks. You don't have to top dress. It keeps a little bit more moisture in the pot, which this Dieffenbachia would not mind. It also is just more aesthetically pleasing if you want to use like something like a Spanish moss like I have back here. You can definitely top dress a plant with that. And I also have some like she shells that I'm just going to put in this plant and top dress it with as well. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and I will see you back here in just a minute. All right, everyone, and just like that, we are all finished here. So just a quick recap on repotting. Make sure you are repotting during the growing season unless absolutely necessary. If it is a new plant, let it acclimate before you stress it out even more by repotting. Make sure you're using a clean planter, a clean soil mixture as well. Consider the type of planter that you're using. Is it terracotta for a succulent type mix and a succulent type plant, or is it a plastic pot for something that likes a little bit more moisture? Also, make sure you are only repotting one size up. If you are using a 4-inch planter to begin with, move it up to a 6-inch planter. If it isn't a 6-inch planter to begin with, move it up to an 8-inch planter, so on and so forth. All right, everyone, I think that just about covers it. I know today was a longer video, but I hope you found this helpful and informative. Most importantly, just have fun with it. Don't stress out about your plants. They will, either survive or they won't, and it's not a big deal. So let me know if you guys have any questions, and I hope this video was helpful. Don't forget to subscribe and like. I appreciate it, and I will see you on the next video. Bye-bye.